Welcome to this episode of the Uncharted 80s podcast. I'm joined once again by my great friend Noel. How you doing, Noel?
Very good, very good.
And for those that are listening for the first time, this podcast shines a light on the bands and the people that perhaps haven't had that level of spotlight over the years. Now, today, Noel, we're joined by somebody I know that you know very well, by photographer Derek D'Souza. Welcome, Derek, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Now, Derek has been taking photographs since his late teens and has been commissioned by many bands, some that we've featured on the podcast and some that we haven't. It's an impressive roster. A sample of those are The Jam, The Style Council, Paul Weller, Noel Gallagher, The Rifles, From The Jam, The Stranglers, The Strypes, 9 Below Zero, The Truth, Billy Franks, The Faith Brothers, The Vapors.
Your picture of me and you. You wrote I love you, I wrote me too. I sit and stare at it, there's nothing else to do. Oh, it's in colour. Your hair is brown, your eyes are hazel and soft as clouds. I often kiss you when there's no one else around. I got your picture. I'd like a million of you all around my cell. I want a doctor to take a picture so I can look at you from inside as well. You got me turning up and turning down. I'm turning in, I'm turning right, I'm turning Japanese. I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so. Turning Japanese, I think I'm turning Japanese, I really think so.
There's more detail on his website, and I'll put the link to that website in the show notes. So, Derek, can you just start by giving us a little bit about your sort of upbringing and your background and how you got into photography?
Well, we moved to England. I was born in India, born in Bombay, so I refuse to call it Mumbai because it says Bombay on my birth certificate. And my parents moved to England when I was 2. We moved to Wimbledon, and then we progressively moved down the line, literally from Wimbledon to Rains Park to New Malden. And that's where we stayed. The family, my dad sadly passed away a couple of years ago, was still in the family home, 60 years later. And I've always moved. So having moved 5,000 miles, I've always moved within about like a 3 or 4 mile radius. Music wasn't a big thing in my house. So in terms of, I know a lot of people have been influenced by their parents' record collection, but my parents' record collection was awful. If there wasn't much of it anyway. I remember my dad had some stuff by Mantovani. I can't even remember him ever playing it, but I think maybe, I don't know why he had this stuff, and things like Perry Como and all this kind of stuff. Nothing I particularly liked. So there was never any kind of musical influences in the house. Photography was, again, how I got into it really. I'd always liked seeing pictures, but again, growing up, cameras were expensive and film was expensive and development was expensive. So we never had a family camera, I think, till I was maybe 11 or 12. We went on a family holiday back to India. So my parents saved up for a camera because they were so expensive. And on that holiday, I got to take some pictures using the camera. I couldn't go mad because, again, it was expensive. But I love doing it. I've still got the camera, actually. I kept it all these years. And I always liked the idea. If there was a chance at any time at an event where someone had a camera that I could use, I don't mean just walking up to a photographer, but like a family event, I would always try and, take some pictures if I could. And then when I was 18, my dad promised me if I passed my exams, he would buy me a camera. And then using that camera, I kind of started going into, just taking pictures of random stuff, really. And then because I started going to gigs, it soon came a time when I thought, well, these are 2 things I'm really into. How hard, maybe I'll combine the 2. How hard can it be? And it turned out it was a lot harder than I thought. And the first one I ever did, I think this was the first one, was The Jam at the Rainbow. So I picked a really tough gig. So one, you couldn't just walk in with the camera. So I had to sneak the camera in. And those gigs on that tour, the lighting was very stark. I often felt that Weller didn't like lights in his eyes, and you'd see his eyes would often be, very shadowed with lights not in his face, on top of him. And the gigs were mental. You could be standing in one spot and 5 seconds later you'd be 20 feet away and you'd have no choice in the matter how, so where you went. So trying to plant your feet on the ground and take pictures in the middle of all that was pretty much impossible. and the photos are dreadful. I got them back. I was really excited to get them back, and I thought there was almost nothing on it. It was so clear, which means there's nothing, no information on it. And I tried to learn about it as well. There was obviously no Google. Went to the library. I went to, camera shops. Nobody knew anything about gig photography. So I just had to I thought either give in or persevere with it. So I did. And just really from trial and error, I learned from it. But I think a lot of the ones were those kind of gigs where it was probably the worst place to learn. If I'd gone to like a small gig, with a smaller band in a venue, I'm sure I would have learned a lot more. But I did a bit of that as well. But I think trying out in those big gigs was crazy. But to say, you either give up or you get better, and I persisted with it, really.
How did you get the camera in if you had to sneak it in?
Oh, well, I actually had to put. I basically had the camera, which wasn't very big, and one lens. It wasn't like now when you can change stuff around. And the most I could afford was 4 rolls of film. So the film would go, 3 rolls used to go in the underpants, back days before boxer shorts, in the little cases though, to be fair, in the little plastic canisters, and then one in the film. And I learned I could do it with my eyes shut. I used to practice with an old roll of film. I could, with my eyes shut, take a roll out, load another one, and set it up, all without looking at the camera. Basically literally blindfolded. Because in the gig you haven't got time to look down anyway. Plus, I didn't want to get caught, so I would trying to do it discreetly. What I would sometimes do was take like a gym bag and wrap the lens in a towel or something at the bottom, and then put like damp clothes on top, because nobody wants to go through someone's gym kit. And I think part of the challenge was getting past security, getting the camera in. I missed some of that in a way. I haven't done it for a long time, but it was quite exciting. In fact, I did get a really good quote from Rick Buckler, some of the best pictures to come out of a pair of underpants. Which I love. So I should get that printed on the t-shirt.
So the jam gigs, I went to a lot of jam gigs as well, loads of them like yourself. The obviously the crowd were like, bouncing all over the place. It was like one massive mosh pit, the whole of the downstairs. So were you standing in the midst of that lot, trying to take so you must have been worried that your camera's going to get knocked out of your hands for a start.
Yeah, I think you kind of worry. There's a mixture between your own safety and the camera safety. But again, I literally have one camera and a lens, and it was quite tough. I mean, it's definitely got knocked around a lot. And there was gigs where none of the pictures came out because you were just being knocked about for the 90 minutes or whatever the time was. It was crazy. So you get back nothing. And what I would often do is I wouldn't go right to the front. I'd go maybe 25, 30 rows back. So I was far enough away, or not so far that I couldn't maybe still take a picture, far enough away for the security not to bother to come and get me. If you're at the front, they might more like to pull you out. So
True. I guess in later years you're able to get a pass and actually sort of get in a safe area under the stage or whatever to take the photos, I guess.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, not all venues have that. I mean, there's venues like the 100 Club, there's no pit. So then it's difficult because you're then conscious of not getting in people's way. And if I can, I try and move around so you only upset people for short periods of time. And I'm really lucky as well. If it's like a Rifles gig, I know so many of the fans, so they'll let me in. And if I want to move, then they let me move, and they don't give me any grief. I've even had them look out for me. When it's got a bit lively as well. So it's nice like that. But I like the pit then, because otherwise you're in the same spot all the time. If you can't move, like the 100 Club is difficult if it's a really packed gig.
But it's not a professional thing you do though. They don't pay you, do they? It's like or do they? I don't know.
No, sometimes I do, but I often do it for the love of it, really. And it's trying to capture. It's something that, I mean, most of the time you don't get paid. If it's a commission job, it's one thing.
Yeah.
There's bands who I like to photograph, and also there's bands I want to support and help them as well. So it's a bit of a mixture, really. But it is supposedly my living, which is not so great when you do too much of it for free. But it's not why I got in. I never got into photography for the money, which is just really.
Tell us about how you got chosen to do a shoot of the jam.
Well, again, I was very lucky. It was since 1981, and I'd seen them a few times. Well, I'd seen them a lot of times by then. Plus, I'd photographed them a few times, and I was getting better with what I was doing. I was learning more about it. I still had amateur equipment. I had amateur equipment till about 12 years ago. I've always had not had what I would call professional grade until the last 12 years. And to a point, it does make a difference. So with the jam, I'd taken a few photographs at gigs. And the other thing I remember, when the band appeared on TV back then, there was no video, no Sky Plus, no Sky Q, nothing where you could record it. So if you wanted to see something, you had to come home and watch it and be there on time. And I remember they setting up the camera on a tripod, but knowing that it was going to be on a TV show. But they played the start video. It might have even been Top of the Pops. So I took some pictures off the screen. And some of them looked, looked pretty good, and some looked dreadful. So I picked some of the. I think there's one in the guitar solo in Start, and I've sent those with some pictures, some gigs to the fan club. And Paul wrote back, and this is a great thing about the time and the band as well. And the Faith Brothers were a bit like this as well, where they would take the trouble to write back to you when they were huge. I mean, now you would never get near somebody. Amazingly, with Paul, he wrote back and he said, "I really like the pictures, and maybe we'll do something." And when you're a fan, it's like getting that through the post. Just
that's incredible. That's brilliant.
It's hard. I don't even know how to put it into words. Anyway, it was obviously a huge deal. And when they were like my band in terms of they meant everything to me. So I sent some more in after some of the summer gigs, and I must have posted on the Monday, and then Tuesday I was on my way home. And I just nipped into the snooker club in New Malden. I saw my dad, and I was just about to leave, and he said to me, "Oh, by the way, some Weller woman rung for you about a photo session, and she'll call you back." So I literally ran home from the snooker club, waiting in for the phone call, which didn't come until Sunday night. So I stayed in, and I think I was 21 at the time, so I was out and about a lot. So staying in was not the done thing at the time. So I remember, then I started to think later in the week, is it a wind up with somebody? But I thought I only posted them on the Monday. I hadn't told anybody I'd sent them. Anyway, Sunday night.
So it can't be a wind up, yeah.
No, but then you start to wonder, don't you? And it's like,
yeah.
And I never told anybody during the week either, so that was probably quite good as well. And then Sunday night, and Paul's mum rung me and said, "I'm so sorry I lost your number." And I was, trying to be cool, say, "Oh, no, it's fine, Anyway, she said that we really like your pictures, and we'd like to, come over to the house and meet us, her and John.
Paul's dad, yeah.
So I didn't drive at the time, and I was working in London. So I remember getting a train to Woking, and then Anne picked me up. It just reminded me of if a friend came round to my parents' house, they would always make a fuss of them. What would you like to drink? What do you want to eat? Just make them feel as as comfortable as possible. Not over the top, but just comfortable. I remember Anne doing me egg and chips and a cup of tea because I hadn't eaten. But I showed them everything I had, or a lot of the stuff I had, and they really liked them. But I went back a second time. I think they asked me to go back again, but they really liked them. And then the next thing was, spoken to the band. I think this would have been mostly Paul, because I think from what happened later, but they said, the band would like to meet you. At the time, they were recording in Air Studios, which is George Martin Studios up at Oxford Circus. So the date was arranged to go and meet them. The night before, I hadn't put this in the first book I did, this little story. I told Nikki Weller about it a few years ago, and she said,
Paul's sister, yeah.
Something else. Yeah, sorry, Paul's sister, sorry.
Yeah.
And basically what happened was the night before, I got arrested before the photo shoot, before going to the studio. And what it was, I was out with 3 of my mates, and we were just drinking up in the West End. And as I was walking along, there was, this yellow plastic traffic cones you get.
Yeah.
I just flicked at one on my foot. It just wobbled a little bit. It didn't fall over. It didn't fall in the road. I just flicked it. It just wobbled a bit. That was it. And then I heard his voice shout out, "Stop!" And it was "You in the blue." And we all looked down. We're all wearing blue. Me and my 3 friends. So we turned around, and it was a young copper. He said, "You're nicked." Like, for what? For drunk and disorderly. Well, I'm certainly not drunk. I'm definitely not disorderly, but that was it. No arguing with it. In the back of the van. So I got taken to the police station. And I had to stay there. My friends came down, bless them, and I had to stay there a few hours. They said, "Well, you got a court appearance tomorrow." I said, "Oh no, can't do tomorrow. I'm meeting the Jam in the studio." Said, "No, you're going to court tomorrow." So I basically had to go to court, Horseferry Road Magistrates Court. So I remember I had to be there. So I remember getting there really early, just so I can hopefully get in and get out and be on my way, with things to do. I told the desk guy there what had happened, and he said, you shouldn't even be here. This is ridiculous. He said, "But look, I can't do anything about that. Just go in, say you're sorry, pay your £5. You won't get a criminal record, and you'll be on your way." So while I was in there, and the judge, you go up, and the judge said, "Have you got anything to say for yourself?" And the first thing that came into my mind was the bit in Quadrophenia when they're in court with Sting and Jimmy. And I thought, should I say something cheeky? And I just said, no, Your Honour, I haven't. But better of it. I thought, one eye on the clock as well. So I paid my £5 and left, and then went up to the studio. And as I remember, as I walked in the building, as the lift opened, George Martin walked out of the lift.
Wow.
I said, obviously recognised him immediately. He went, "Hi, George." He went, "Hello, young man." I thought, "Oh God, what are you doing? Shouldn't, it's George Martin." But anyway, he was really polite. And I went in, and then I went up to the studio, and then I went in. The band were recording at the time. And they all came out and stopped and shook hands and introduced quite funny being introduced to people that, is your favorite band and you know who they are. And I'd met them all briefly before, but it's not like, you're not mates with people like that. It's and so even not now. I mean, I still know them all. I'm probably better friends with a couple of them, but it's just different. Anyway, they were great, and they were recording. So I remember spending some time, in the studio while they were recording. Took a few pictures, and then Paul, and then they wanted to have a break. So Paul said, we'll play Paul. Do you want to play? We'll play doubles, you and me, and it was me and him against Kenny Wheeler, who was the tour manager, and Joe, who was one of the Minders. And we won 2-1, which is crazy things that you remember. But when you're a fan and you get to play with one of your heroes, but they treated me. It was great. And anyway, we'd arranged. Paul basically gave the outline of the photo shoot, which was, he said it was in Chiswick House, or Chiswick Park we called it at the time. And I never knew it was called Chiswick House too much later. But he never said about the Beatles or anything at the time. But I'll come to that. That the Beatles haven't filmed there. And the idea was to photograph them with like the dark suits against like the natural backgrounds plus the statues. Now, I didn't know that the statues were like 14 foot tall. And even if you've got a 6 foot person next to a 14-foot statue, it's not a great look. If you just have them stood next to each other, and some of the pictures like that weren't great. Plus, I never went along before to the venue to scout it out or anything.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. Did you scope it?
No.
Decide where to do the shots? No.
This was my first ever photo shoot for anybody or anything like that. I'd never done a photo shoot. That was it, basically. So I had no idea what you're supposed to do or what you're not supposed to do. The only thing was I knew my equipment reasonably well, and I invited some friends along as well. There was 2 girls who were friends of mine, and there was 4 young lads who were fans of the Jam as well. And we met them at Chiswick Station, I think, because it was like, there wasn't room in the car, so they had to make their own way there. But I remember going there, and then for the young lads, they were so nervous. They hardly said anything, and then I think they just left. And then they just left after about half an hour, whatever time. It was just too much for them. And I think what was good for me was I knew I was there to do a job. Obviously, I was nervous. Of course, I was nervous, but not the kind of nerves where you can't function. And once you started doing something, I just kind of got into it, and it was great. They let me, a lot of the ideas came from me. I'll be walking along, again, not having scouted out the venue, which, a lot of people would do. People said to me, how could you not have been? I said, well, I didn't know you were supposed to do that. This is my first time. And we just kind of looked around the place, and it was just coming up with ideas and things like there was one where, as you just walked by the window, it was a nice day. It wasn't too bright. And there was one where they walked by, I just saw someone's reflection in the window of the building. I thought, let's try that. And now it's hard enough with digital camera. I mean, you can see the picture. But back then on film, to try to take a picture of a reflection in a window, but it came out okay. I mean, again, you try. I'm always one of these photographers who tries things. And I think I've always been a photographer where I kind of look around, see what's there, and then come up with ideas. I think that's stood me in good stead, because sometimes you don't have a choice as to when you're going to do the shoot or where. And it's not always the best place. So you have to be creative. So I think that's always helped me. But I remember the band were great on the day. I think the 2 girls being there, that definitely helped. I think everyone was relaxed. And they just were really cooperative, whatever I asked them to do. And I remember at the end, I gave all the films to Bruce because he was going to get everything processed. And then but at that time, you're sort of thinking, what if I've done something wrong? You'd no idea. Are they going to come out? They're not going to come out. What if I've messed it up? That could have been my one chance. You don't know. But I didn't worry too much. But when you've got time to think about these things, you knew
you took the lens cap off. That's a
yeah. which people often point out to me at gigs. You got the lens cap on, and I'll say to them, "Yes, I'm not using it at the moment." They were great. They were great in the day, and I remember talking to Rick about it more recently, and he was saying, "We knew you were nervous. Of course we did, but we weren't there to make it difficult for you." And they were great. And there's lots of things where you can't help but think sometimes. I know it's pointless, but if I was to do it again, then there's so many things I would do differently. But then it's a pointless exercise as well, because life doesn't work that way. And then maybe I wouldn't have got some of the shots that I got. The thing with the statues was, and Paul had mentioned it, I tried to do that, stick to that quite often. And when you've got 3 guys and then you've got 3 massive statues spread out, things start to get very small in the picture. Listen, it wasn't, again, like any photo shoot, it's not about getting every single picture. It's about getting enough for whatever's needed. And obviously they chose 2 for the sleeve, which is, as a fan and as a fledgling photographer, it was massive.
When did you know then that they were going to use your pictures?
Well, I remember Bruce ringing me. I think he rang me 7 times to make sure the spelling of my name, which is, again, it's a big deal. You can imagine you've done something and then your name is spelled wrong. I think he sent them back to me, and Bruce contacted me and let me know. But I didn't know which pictures yet. I had to wait till it came out. But it's amazing that even like now, people will come up to me at gigs and people will talk to me about those photos. So much as I'm proud to have done it, I've also realised I was very fortunate.
It must have raised your profile after once
Well,
all that was out and your name was on it.
I think it did, but then there was no social media, so people. In fact, people said to me over the years, they wondered who this Derek D'Souza was. Somebody said that he thought I was some Italian fashion photographer or something. It's a Portuguese name, but people had. And again, I never thought about that because it was my name. But I know what it's like when you look through as a fan, you would pore over the sleeve and all the details and wonder who this was and where was that. But I guess when you've taken it, you don't have to do any of that. But I thought, that's it. I've arrived now. The phone will ring. I'll get bookings but it wasn't like that at all. And you realise quite quickly that if you want to, you have to kind of work at it. But yeah, I thought that was it. Will be it, and it wasn't like that. But hey, listen, I had to get that opportunity. I still can't, thank Paul enough for it. I was lucky.
So obviously, I first met you at the Faith Brothers. I think I recall being in the studio. We were in Caledonian Road, I think, one Sunday afternoon, I think. They took a break and went across to like a children's play park.
Oh, yeah, in that park.
You took a load of shots, yeah, didn't you?
I've got those pictures. Again, I don't think he's ever seen these pictures. I remember, I'm sure Mark Waterman.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if they've been told that to wear like reasonable clothes, but he turned up in like some weird top and a kind of like a sweatshirt top and joggers. It was like, no, that's not the best look. So Mark, you better stand at the back.
Obviously, you were close to Billy as well before he passed, bless him. So what can you share some of your memories of, Billy and the Faith Brothers?
I can remember I first came across them when Country of the Blind came out. Heard it on the radio. I thought this is great.
Yeah.
And I went down to the marquee they were playing, and Tony Fletcher was there, who used to be in Apocalypse, the band, and he did Jamming. Remember the fanzine?
Jamming magazine, yeah.
And he said to me, "I'm just about to be the manager of the band," because obviously I knew him from the Jam offices, and so that was the first time I saw him. I took my camera along, first time I'd ever seen this band, but I was blown away. They were just fantastic, and I was hooked immediately. And it wasn't that I was looking for. I mean, I've seen other bands, obviously the Truth, and people were. I think a lot of people were looking for somebody to replace the Jam in their lives.
Yes, I agree.
Like that. It's got to be, the natural thing, not just for the sake of it. I liked him, and I can remember Bill. He was very quiet. He was very studious, but he had different, almost not personalities, as in like mood swings. I mean, he became. I first met him. He was very, I'll say, very quiet. I probably got on best with Lee out of probably Lee and Steve in the band. And Lee didn't live far from me, so he'd often very kindly drop me home, after wherever we'd been, wherever they'd been out somewhere and gigs and everything. And it was great. They treated me really well, become good friends with them. And then Bill kind of not changed, but after the Faith Brothers, he did like the Rebel Angels and he did some solo stuff. And he was much more outgoing as a person. And he was a great speaker. I mean, in a storyteller, that was him. And him doing like an audience with Billy Franks when he would talk and tell the stories and play guitar and play piano was just fantastic nights, because he was very well read, and he was very well informed, and yeah, we became really good friends. I mean, when I got married, Bill and Lee played and in fact, somebody else couldn't sit in, but Tim sat in on drums, and they played at our wedding. But then I remember DJing like some of Billy's birthday parties. Later on, Bill taught me to play. I think you know about this. He taught me to play guitar.
You told me that, yeah.
So the deal was he would teach me guitar and I'll teach him how to play chess. But I think he beat me on like the second or third game of chess. I remember saying to him once, one day it'd be great because he's playing with this was the Big Five. Sorry, when he did the covers band with Lee and Tony and Steve.
Yes.
They like a residency at the Leather Bottle in Merton. I said to him, it'd be great one day to get up and play with you. He said, yeah, it's a great idea. We'll do it. So one Saturday night, I think definitely the first song I ever learned was In the Midnight Hour. So Bill said, well, what we'll do, I'll call you up. And you walk through the pub, packed. It was like 350 people with your guitar, and get up and join us. We'd make a thing of it, and it was like, God, I was so nervous as it was. And I just couldn't, but I enjoyed it, and it went all right. So I used to do it quite often. I used to get up every couple of weeks and, learn if I was learning something new, or he'd tell me the chords on stage and we'd play. And they were some of the best nights in my life. And we'd stay in there. That song, Sing It One More Time for the Brokenhearted.
Say I'm tired of singing that same old song. Say the time must come, you got to be moving on. You need another stage, need another road, need another town. But before you go, just sing it one more time. Sing it one more time. Sing it one more time. For in the morning we will be parting. So won't you just sing it one more time for the broken hearted. Here in this dirty old bar where our lives have grown.
It used to remind me of those nights where we'd stay in the pub till sometimes like 5 o'clock in the morning. We'd get the guitar out, and whoever would stay, and people would drift off as the hours passed. It was so tough when he passed away, because people talk about all kinds of things, such a great writer, singer, performer. But for me, he was my friend. That was the hardest bit. Is all those things were all important and part of the relationship we had, but he was my friend, and that was the toughest bit. But a lot of people loved him. His funeral was tough. I remember I got up to speak, and I was lucky I needed my glasses to read, because I couldn't see the people's faces because it would have been too hard. But I could just knew who people were and where they were. But just to speak at his funeral, it was so difficult. I had a little meet up once with the rest of the band. We went out one night for a few drinks in London. And the strange thing was, fun enough, we didn't hardly talk about Bill, which is really weird, because that was kind of the reason we met up. But I don't know, maybe it was just too tough for people. I can get that with people. And he just kind of talked about other things. But yeah, he's missed by a lot of people. And I often mention, I talk about songwriters, and I'll say Bill, without a doubt, one of the best singer-songwriters and frontmen I've ever seen, because he could hold your attention. Unfortunately for them, when they released Easter Parade, I think that was the nail in the coffin for them from the record company. They weren't interested in the public, the publicity at the time and the political stuff.
Dressed to kill one cool spring morning, got on board the first from Portsmouth. On the crest of a rising wave of hate for strangers of our own kind. But the headlines cheering crowds and flags, I must admit, stirred something in me that faded as we pulled away and turned out to be only fear disguised. The bulls are oxbait, the pious prayed. I think it rained on the Easter parade. Down south
And it was a shame because they were such a good band, and live they were one of the best bands I've ever seen.
Oh, absolutely, totally. And Easter Parade, fantastic song.
Yeah, I can remember sitting in a hotel room in Liverpool with the band and Bill just playing it on an acoustic guitar. It was just, you could hear a pin drop in him. It was just, you kind of felt like you were looking up at him with admiration, and he'd written this song and he just played it so beautifully, just him on guitar. And it was like me, the manager, and the band in this room, and it was like some of these moments were just fantastic.
Yeah, I think you and I probably first met at the Truth gigs. What's your memories of them as a band? Because you obviously you took some pictures of them, and they've used that in some of their releases, haven't they?
They were great. I mean, again, it was. I know there was. I felt from a lot of fans they were looking for somebody to replace the Jam, but I'd known Dennis from 9 Below Zero, so it was different for me in that respect. In fact, I have to tell you, the first time I think it was the first time I ever saw them was at that place, the Venue again. And I remember they used to do food. They used to do great burgers at this place, and they had the big wooden tables, almost like a mess hall. And I remember eating my dinner, and Dennis stepping off the stage onto the table and walking down the table, and I was like, "Move your plate out of the way." But it was like, I've never seen anyone do this before. This is something special. And I saw that the Inmates album sleeve in the Behind You, but I saw Dr. Feelgood, who I loved, and then I saw the Inmates because of Dr. Feelgood, and then I saw 9 Below because of the Inmates. But the Truth had something about them, and I still think it was amazing that Dennis brought Mick in, and he said he just felt he was right, didn't he? Whether he couldn't play, he said he would teach him, but just the whole band. And again, we used to travel around all over to see him. I didn't drive. 3 of us used to go regularly to see him, and one of our friends would drive, but we travelled all around the country to see him. And I remember when they went on tour, we would drive around to the gigs. And I think because we got to a venue early, I remember one gig, we had like a pass for the tour. And then I remember Mick Lister arrived without a pass, and the security wasn't letting him in. And I said to him, no, that's all right. And he said, is that all right, Derek? It's all right if Mick comes in. It's just like the security guys asking, just get him confirmation from me. Mick really probably remember this, but it was like one gig. But he just was getting confirmation from me for the guitarist to come in. It was hilarious. Even in like some of the bigger gigs that I think was might have been in a university somewhere, we're playing football in the hall where the gig was going to be before the gig, before anyone's in. So the band have done the sound check, and then it's like time to kill, another game of football. I felt it was much more intimate with them, Faith Brothers and the Truth.
How come they came to use your picture on the front of the box set then?
The guy from Cherry Records got in touch with me and asked. I've still got tons of stuff that nobody's ever seen. I think they were looking for something, and I sent some stuff to Dennis. I can't, it's not even that long ago. I can't remember, but I'm sure I definitely sent it through to Cherry Records. Yeah, but I was dead chuffed to have it on the front cover of.
But where was that picture taken then?
I was at the BBC. That was the day. That was when they did Top of the Pops. They had a competition. They were doing. I think it must have been second single.
Second time lucky, it's been too long. Second time lucky to catch your smile. Second time lucky, it's been too long. Second time lucky to catch your smile. So now I've got the chance. I can't prove myself again. To
there was a competition and fans were invited to, to enter. And if you won, you got a day with the band at Top of the Pops. And I won, which I thought that somebody must have known me, but because I'd obviously close with them at that point, but I don't know whether somebody did me a massive favor or not. Anyway, but I wasn't there as a photographer, and there was a photographer there for the day, and he took pictures of us around the day. In fact, he sent me the negatives after, and when I got them, I sent them back to him. They got lost in the post. So I know, I felt so bad. So I got the contact sheet somewhere, but they're like, half the size of a stamp. There's nothing you can do anything with. But there was one picture in a magazine, like Number One or Smash Hits or something, and it showed them being shaking hands with like the doorman at Top of the Pops, and I'm in the picture with the band. It was my first time at Top of the Pops, and also, as everybody says who's ever been, I always thought it was a lot bigger there, how small the studio was. But everything is staged. People tell you when to clap, when to stop, when to move, and if you're not doing the right thing, they'll tell you again. But it's such a huge show for so many people. But when I'm in the dressing room, I had my camera, so I took my camera along with me for the day. At one point, I think it was Brian Bethel said to me, "Right, we're going to get in." So I've got the camera, and they're all coming towards me as I'm stepping back, and then he fell over the table behind me. But that was the shot from that. And I think if I'd been a photographer who'd been hired for the day, that wouldn't have happened. It's only because I knew them and I'd been seeing them such a lot and become friends with people that they treat you differently. And you capture moments. I remember when they were in the studio, I got moments when they weren't even paying attention to me taking pictures.
And where are those pictures now, Derek? You must have a right library of them.
Yeah, well, some are in boxes. A lot of them on negatives. I've still got some of the prints, but I've kept all the negatives to things. In fact, one thing I want to try and do at some point is I'm trying to look at doing something with a proper agency.
I feel an Uncharted 80s exhibition coming on, Derek, with all of these pictures.
Well, I don't know if they're good enough. I mean, some of them will be good, but there was stuff, some would be interesting for different. I photographed Wham, and I gave the pictures away to somebody, but I've got the negatives, so I can't even remember what the pictures look like. But this would have been I think it was 1983 or 84. It was a miners' benefit gig, and they mimed. There was always a big fuss about that, I remember. But I took photos of them. But yeah, I would like to get some of those. I remember photographing Phil Lynnott's band, Grand Slam, a couple of times. I've got some great pictures of them. Again, nobody's ever seen this stuff.
We recently interviewed Dave and Steve from the Vapors.
Paper and appears to be quite serious. And you smile at him and agree 'cause he's your old man. Still I can't hear you. You make no sense to me. Still I can't hear you. When the time comes I disagree with your policy.
Also, you've been snapping them for a while.
Yeah, when the Vapors were going to start again, they played. The first gig was at Dingwalls and in London, and I wasn't sure whether to go or not. I thought, well, they were such a good band. Sometimes things are just better just left. If you go along and you're disappointed, and I thought so highly of them. But anyway, went along and they were fantastic, And Michael on drums, everybody else was the same. They were just amazing. So we've seen them quite a lot. Nuclear Days, that album is the album I can most relate to of anything I've ever heard, because at that time of my life, so many of the songs I could relate to with personal things happening in my life. First proper girlfriend, traveling to London, fear of nuclear, all these other things. And if somebody had written an album for me, pretty much that would have been the one.
And I think you've done one or two of the Portmeirion weekenders, have you?
Yes, done it twice.
Oh, tell us about that. 'Cause I love it there, but I've never got to see the Vapors play there.
It's a fantastic place. The first time we went, it was really bad weather. I'd never seen The Prisoner. In fact, I've still never seen The Prisoner, so I didn't know this backstory of the venue or anything about it. But it was just a fantastic place to see them.
There's someone banging on my wall. I turn the volume up to full. I don't know who it is or why they don't like me. I don't feel safe in this street. prisoner number one. I'm prisoner number one. We're all prisoners. We're all prisoners. We're all prisoners.
So I believe that you were into a band called the Strypes,
Yes.
an Irish band, and I think if I recall that you went and spent some time with them over in their place in Cavan in Ireland. Is that right?
No, I didn't. Unfortunately,
Right.
I always meant to see them in Cavan because that's their hometown.
Yeah.
We've seen them in Ireland. We've seen them in Dublin, and we've seen them in Northern Ireland. Seen Dublin a couple of times, but I never got to Cavan. I always thought we would get a chance to go, and I will get there one day. Would have been lovely to see them there because, again, became friends with them. But also, what was strange was became friends with the families. But I remember going to Amsterdam to see them when the first time they played.
Wow.
Baby, why you gotta act so shy? You drive me crazy when you look into my eyes. Well, you don't know my name, and I ain't gonna tell you 'cause it ain't my game. I got you in the palm of my hand. Well, baby, I can be your mystery man. Oh, baby, I ain't trying to fill you with doubt.
But I remember we went to see them in first time they played in New York or in America. So we literally thought I've got to go to see this band. I'd seen them already, but I can remember the first time I saw them as well. But I remember I've got to go and see them. So we flew to New York. I think it was 2013 or 14. Because the weather was terrible. And the gig was that night. The next afternoon, we flew down to San Francisco. And I remember being at the airport, changing out of like winter coats into like summer stuff because obviously it's a completely different time.
Yeah.
They did 2 shows in San Francisco, and we had, I think, nearly a week there, which was great. And then drove down to LA for the last gig at the Troubadour, which was where Elton John, massive, famous venue there. A lot of people, everyone's played, and then flew back. But I saw them a lot, and they were a great band, one of the best live bands I've ever seen. Yeah, it's a shame it didn't. I mean, they did do very well, but people forget they've been together a long time as well. And there was no falling out. Sometimes people, fall out, or there's other reasons, but sometimes it's just a time to stop,
And they did 3 great albums. I was really surprised when they finished, to be honest with you. And I was
I was. I think, unfortunately, the business the way it is now, I can remember there was a documentary on them as well, and it's so much of it is it's numbers. It doesn't matter almost whether you're selling fridges or microwaves. You've got to sell. It's how many units you're shifting. And I think the second album didn't do as well as the first, and the third didn't do as well as the second.
No.
Part of it, but the record company, I don't think they were particularly good with. I don't think they were the right company necessarily for them.
She slips, she knocks me out in the first round. She towers over every time that I lay down. She's fucked up, got me bounced up to sundown. 2 drinks in, she's the queen of the half crown. But I love that little girl, she's all mine. She got me breathing in a bag of sunshine. She makes me hazy waiting on the next line. But it's all fine. She's the queen of the half crown. Queen of the half crown. Yeah, queen of the half crown. Queen of the half crown. Yeah. Flips, acrobatics in her brain. She's alive, she's just so hard to contain. She's equipped, got the tools to maintain. She got that edge, yeah, the pedals to sustain. But I love that little girl, she's all mine.
This is the thing people often say, this as if the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is a record deal, but it's got to be the right deal because companies now, not all of them, but it's a business, of course it is, and bigger companies want to return on their money in any investment that they spend, and if they think it's not going somewhere, they'll drop it. So bands don't get the time to develop like they might have done in the past. I mean, I always think the guy from A&R guy from Polydor for the Jam, Dennis Monday, was fantastic because yes, he worked for Polydor, but he looked out for the band. It's a very, how can I put it? It's a reactive industry. So in a lot of ways, because nobody actually knows what's going to happen. So there's bands that we've seen who we thought would go on to be huge.
Yeah.
Billy, like the Faith Brothers, for example, it could be massive. And they played to big audiences. They supported some big acts, but it didn't happen in that way for them. And not because they weren't good enough. It's just one of those things. So they don't know. Even the people at the record company, they don't know what's going to happen. They might think they do, some of them. And there's so many bands that I know who've got other jobs, still do other things. I mean, even the Rifles, they do other stuff.
Yeah.
And they're a decent band sending out decent venues. So it's a tough business,
So let's talk about the Rifles then, because you've mentioned them. Obviously, Martin and I both love the Rifles.
Jimmy was a local boy, but he see much more than the change in the weather. Sitting in a uniform of a three-piece suit and the ribbons from his past. Looking for a little boy at the bar with the mouth. Thinks he's clever now. Dreaming of a day that he comes home from a war to his childhood sweetheart. Now he don't need anyone. There's no one there for him. Just the feeling of an empty place deteriorating. Jimmy was a local boy, but he seen much more than I'm bound to ever. A member of a dying breed on the satin wave as it all just falls apart. Dreaming of a day that's all so long ago that he can't remember right. There was a time a man could still be a man and be proud to use his heart. Now he don't need anyone, there's no one there for him. There was really only one, now he misses how she sounds. He frowns, line them up and he puts them down inside this town.
So how do you get involved with the band?
I think when I saw them, first time I saw them was at Shepherd's Bush, 2014, 2015, maybe around that time, before COVID. But I remember listening to somebody told me to mention the band's name, and I'd heard of them, and I listened to, I think, what was the third album. You know what it's like when you grow up with the band, you learn the albums and the development as they progress. As
Yes,
you go through it. But when you're catching up, it's different. You've got a load of back stuff to listen to. But I listened to this first album, or third album first, and then I went to see them at Shepherd's Bush Empire. One of my mates was inviting me along, and a couple of my friends, I knew a couple of friends, big into them, also into Weller, but also into, listen, you'd love this band. So I thought, okay, we'll go. And they were amazing. It just blew me away. I just got it from the first song. I got it, and you could feel the love for the band in this room. I haven't been to many events where you could genuinely feel the love for someone in the room, which is a hard thing to try and put into words, but you could feel it, So I thought, right, this is great. I love them. Right, now let's go back and get all the back catalogue and start listening to everything else. And I remember they started doing these little Christmas gigs, the Boogaloo gigs.
Yes, yeah, I went to them, yeah.
3-piece. And I remember the gigs would sell out they'd be on at 9 o'clock, and 15 seconds later, they'd be sold out. I can't remember how I first got in touch. I must have either sent some pictures or took something or asked something. I can't, this sounds really bad. I'll have to maybe ask somebody and find out. I can't remember how I got involved with them, but they must have liked what I did. I remember buying tickets for gigs, and they said to me, Derek, why are you buying tickets for gigs? I said, well, because I want to come see you. I said, yes, but you've done a lot for us. And I thought, well, I haven't done anything for you, to be fair. It's just funny, because some bands you do a lot for, and they still want you to buy a ticket. And this band, I felt I hadn't done anything for, and they were treating me fantastically. But I just got on really well with them, and become friends with all of them. They're just top lads, the band, the manager, the crew. And then we tried to try and see them. I think I've seen them about 60 odd times now, in a relatively short period of time, because then we started, right, well, once you go and we're going to try and go to, if we're going to go to 4 gigs, you might as well go to 6, it's like that. That'll be your week's holiday, and just traveling around to see them, and got to meet other fans. And I think that's a big part of it for me, is feel like, I would say I'm definitely part of the fan base now, but I wasn't. And I feel like the Rifles fans kind of took me in and welcomed me very quickly. It sounds odd to say that, but that's how I felt, and that's how they treated me. Not that I necessarily deserved anything, but they've just been really good, and I've become friends with lots of the fans now. If I go to one of their gigs, I might know, if there's 300 people, I might know 100 of them. It's just, and they're great. And I get this again. It's that thing of, it's not that the band have got a decent reach in terms of numbers, but they've got there's a very hardcore group of fans who go to loads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, they're such nice guys. In fact, I went to a gig. My daughter was there with her mates. It was her 18th birthday, my daughter, and we got the band to play a song for her 18th at the gig. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
They're really nice. Yeah, there's no. I mean, they're the only band I know who would be in the pub across the road when they're playing, like the Roundhouse. Obviously, the fans know them. They don't bother them. They don't hound them. They're not like, can you sign it? And can I? There'll be maybe a couple of pictures, and they'll say hello. But that's it. I mean, I don't think it would be different for Paul. He would have to have so many pictures taken with so many people and sign so many things, and I just think it would be to the point where it's not fun anymore. Whereas people allow them that, they don't crowd them like that, even though they're big fans. They just allow them to, it's such a unusual thing. I can't even think how you would describe it, but it's great. I see them, you nod and say hello, and you don't always bother down and talk to them, because I see them plenty of times. I'm very lucky. So, you don't be selfish as well. You have to think of that too. You can't just go and talk to them every time.
Yeah. Or
for ages. You need to say hello and shake hands. Sometimes that's, then other times I'll chat to them. So it's just like a family. Like the Faith Brothers had that family,
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
I think they used your picture for their live album at the Roundhouse. I went to that.
Yes, yes. That picture, I had it in my mind because I've been to the venue before I set foot in the venue. That was the picture I wanted to take. It wasn't like a photo shoot, but I had this shot in my mind from the back, and to get the curve of the room. I don't know if you know, but it used to be, trains used to come in there.
Yeah, it used to be a turntable, didn't it?
Yeah, they used to turn them around. Yeah, I only found this out a few years ago, but that's really interesting. And it kind of adds something to the layout of the room, and why it is that way, obviously. But I had this shot in my mind. So I remember thinking, well, I've got the whole gig to shoot anyway. So I went, rather than starting the pit, there was 2 photographers doing the whole gig, and there was a few photographers just doing like the first 3 songs, which is often the case. If I'm lucky enough to have like a pass to do the whole gig, I often keep out of the pit the first 3, so I'm not in people's way, let them have all the space that they need, knowing I can go in later. Anyway, so I went to the back, and I had this shot in my mind. I'm waiting for them to come on. I knew, and I took a few shots from the back and just tried to get as much of the room as I could. So that was, in fact, it came down to between me and the other photographer, which was the cover shot. So that was that horrible thing of waiting. But as a fan, I was so chuffed to have my picture on the front of a Rifles album cover.
Life used to be easy. We had time to dream and time to dare. No limitations and a world out there. But you lose the clout and the wheels come off with the wear and the tear. But don't cry your heart out, 'cause nobody cares. You can't shut it out, put it down. No, you can't turn around. Just breathe it in and count to 10. Count to 10. I've got 1,000,001 different bills to pay. I've got a weatherman telling me it's rain again. I've got a knuckle down, I've got a tidy up. I've got cherubs and
interesting
And
enough, one of the questions that we ask everybody on the podcast, and thank you very much for your time, by the way. It's been fantastic. But one of the questions is, what's your greatest memory of your time? So, out of all the things that you've done, what would you say?
I think the Jam, getting the Jam picture on the Jam single, because they were my band, as in they meant everything to me. I'd grown up, listening to them. They meant everything to me, and they still mean so. They mean so much, and it was life changing for me. I have to say, I'm not saying the others weren't, but this was. Although it took a long time to be life changing. Funny enough, because there was loads of people, and again we mentioned this when we were chatting earlier on. But there's people who I would have been at gigs at in 1980 and 81 and so on, who I never knew. So I wouldn't know what they looked like then because I know what they look like now. So we didn't have that connection till so many years later. And again, I think this says so much about the band, and I know Paul said about, their legacy, and integrity is a word that springs to mind, but they mean so much still to so many people. And same with the exhibition. I've not put myself down, but I think it was because of who it was as much as the photographs. Because I only photographed one proper session of them, and people have said to me, and this is not to put myself down, but you were the Jam photographer. I was for 2 hours one afternoon, but it wasn't. It wasn't my life job. It would have been. I would have loved to have been. Don't get me wrong, but it wasn't. That's just how it is. I had my little opportunity, and it's because they are held in such high regard 40 years on. From when they split. That's why so many people came. So, but I also wanted to show other stuff. It wasn't just pictures. There was other memorabilia and things that I'd collected along the time, not of them and other people. So that was, yeah. So I think that just says so much about it. So yeah, I think, being asked by your favourite band to photograph them at the height of their fame when you've never done anything like that before, not a bad place to start, is it?
No, it's brilliant. Thank you. I hope that one day that a lot of the other stuff you've got see the light of day, because it feels like there's a lot of memories there that
Yeah.
a lot of people would really, really like to see.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I think, which is really important, is people at gigs. Because when I was shooting the Jam, I was in the audience, so I didn't get to photograph the audience because I wasn't in the pit or on the stage. You didn't turn around to take pictures of the people in the dark because it's too dark, it's too lively. So people often say, "Oh, did you get me at such?" I think I've got a couple of shots where you could just about see people's faces. But I love shots from the stage when you see the audience, or from the pit and you see people going crazy. And I'm sure there'll be stuff with the Truth where I'll have pictures of the audience, some stuff. And there'll be shots of gigs of the Rifles where I've got people, the front row, and I'll often walk down the front row and try and get, what I can.
Thank you, Derek, for your time. We do really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. I can't believe how quick the time's gone. Yeah.
Cheers, buddy.
Great.
All right,
Thanks
take care.
lot.
Cheers, guys.
See ya.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.